This is a fun one, everybody, because we're getting into the actual meat of the book now, which is the first actual chapter, which I'm going to butcher the pronunciation of this, but it is the Ainulindalë, perhaps. I'm not an expert, so don't crucify me if I pronounce that wrong. But yeah, today is the latest episode of Mondays in Middle Earth, which is a show we've been doing for quite a while now. We started with The Hobbit, we read through, did a week by week chapter analysis every Monday. Then we went into The Fellowship of the Ring, The Two Towers, The Return of the King. We did the appendices, and now we're into the Silmarillion. So we got a lot ahead of us because the Silmarillion is a pretty dense thing, and we got to pull a lot of stuff apart. Now, I haven't read the Silmarillion since probably 1998, 1999, somewhere around there. So it's been a long time, and I don't. I remember vague parts of it, but I'm not intimately familiar with it. So when I read this back in the day, it was kind of before the internet was where it is now. We didn't have social media. We didn't have all these experts, and I'm going to use those air quotes because anybody with an internet connection these days can call themselves an expert. And so when the Rings of Power came out last year, it seemed like a good idea for me to start getting up to speed with all things related to Middle Earth to sort of re-educate myself and go online and find all these resources that could help me become a better acquainted with one of the best book series of all time that I've loved for years. So we did the first couple of we did like the forward and the letter in the last couple episodes, and today we're getting into this first chapter. So we're gonna go through it. I don't know if we're gonna do the whole chapter in this episode because I don't know how deep it is. I'm gonna have questions, and that's the point of this. As we go through this, if you're someone who knows more than I do, awesome. Let us know in the comments below. Answer questions that I might have. Give us more details. And yeah, we'll go through this as we do every week. And don't forget to check out the previous episodes as you can, as you have time. Like, subscribe, hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. And do me a solid. Make sure to, also hit that membership button to support the channel. In the meantime, let's dive in here as we get into our Kindle. So we start off here talking about the music of the Ainur. We get a mention of Eru, the One, who was also called Iluvatar in Arda, and he made the first Aunur. Is it Ainur or Aunur? It's Ainur, I think. Also known as the Holy Ones, which were offspring of his thought. So these are essentially, this is God and the angels. This is Tolkien's, Catholic upbringing coming into play. By the way, for those of you who haven't done so, I would highly urge you to go read C.S. Lewis's Space Trilogy. It's a little more religious in the sense of, Tolkien's influence, Tolkien's religion and the influence of that religion on his works is somewhat evident, but it's a lot more evident in C.S. Lewis's work. But what's very interesting is Lewis mentions the Silmarillion and a lot of his mythology around the versions of the angels and demons and things that he had who were guardians of the planets and everything else is similar in some ways and was inspired by Tolkien's work with the Silmarillion and what he created here with the mythology of the creation of the world of Middle Earth. So I would say go read that if you want to see another parallel by another great author. What's interesting to me here is that we get all this discussion of how when he first brought his thought forth into the consciousness of the angels or the holy ones, the Ainur, it was as a theme of music, and all of the individuals didn't really understand everything because it says here that for a long while they sang to each other alone with only a few of them banded together, but everyone was listening. But they only understood the part that was referenced to them personally because whatever part of the mind of Iluvatar they came from was the part that they understood. So it was kind of like if you're in an orchestra and you've got somebody on the trumpet over here, someone on the saxophone over here, someone on the drums over here, someone on the cymbals over here, someone on the guitar over here, the flute over here, the harp over here. Each individual is kind of listening to their own version in their head, and they understand their part, but they might not necessarily understand the parts of everyone else. But then it says here that eventually their understanding of everything grew, and it says it increased in unison and harmony, and finally Iluvatar brought all of them together and declared a mighty theme here, it said, and he revealed it to them, and all the splendor that it had within it amazed them until they bowed before him and were silent. So that's kind of like, you starting to play your individual part and then taking a look at the overall score and going, "Oh, I get it. Like this is what it is in its entirety." Um, Pretty cool here. So I have a question here. He says here, I have kindled you with the flame imperishable. Now I'm assuming this is something that refers to immortality. Um, but I want to know your thoughts, those of you who are experts on things beyond the Silmarillion. What does he mean exactly by the flame imperishable? It says here, you shall show your powers in this theme with your own thoughts and devices, but I will listen and be glad that great beauty has been brought into this song through you. And then it says then that the voices of the Ainur. Oh, this is funny. I literally was just talking about this being like an orchestra, and he literally says the voices were like harps and lutes, pipes and trumpets, viols and organs, and countless choirs singing with words, fashioning the theme of Iluvatar um, until this music became an endless series of melodies that went throughout the void until it was no longer the void. Huh, interesting. So as this was happening, it says Iluvatar was listening, and while it seemed that it was good for a while, he said there also were, um, he said there was no flaws as he listened, but he says as the theme progressed, the heart of Melkor began to bring into the song his own imaginings, which were different than the ones that Iluvatar had, and they weren't in accord. He was wanting to increase his own power and glory amongst. It's kind of like someone, you know, being a part of that orchestra, and rather than following the instructions of the conductor, deciding, well, I want to play my part louder. I want to be at the forefront. I want my solo, right? I want to do my riff. Yeah. Like that's literally what I envision here is the guy going, man, I want to bust out and play my solo. Says here, among the Aener, he had been given the greatest gifts of power and knowledge, and had often gone alone into the void, seeking the imperishable flame. So the desire for him was he wanted to make things of his own, beings of his own. And it said here that he felt like Iluvatar wasn't looking into the void and didn't really care about it, and he was impatient at the fact that the void was empty. But it says here he couldn't find the fire, but it only lies with Iluvatar. But, hmm. Ooh. Says straightaway discord arose about him as he riffed his solo until around him some began to become affected by it. And they began to play along with his solo rather than Iluvatar's. And says Iluvatar sat and hearkened till it seemed there was a raging storm around his throne, until he finally rose up. Now he smiles here, lifting up his left hand. A new theme begins, similar and yet different to the former, gathering power. But also Melkor's rose in uproar and contended with it until there was a war of sound. Ooh. It says until the point where the Ainur were dismayed and sang no longer, and it seemed as though Melkor had the mastery, until Iluvatar rose again. And this time he was stern, and he lifted up his right hand this time. And it said, now a third theme grew, unlike the others, at first soft and sweet, until it took upon itself power and profundity. In the midst of all of this, it says, the halls of Iluvatar shook, and a tremor ran out, and Iluvatar rose a third time, and it says his face was terrible to behold, and at this point he raised up both his hands. This is literally the conductor. This is so hilarious because I haven't read this in 20 plus years, and that was the vision that came to my mind, and it maybe I'm unconsciously remembering this from 20 plus years ago. Um, raising up both hands, and a chord deeper than the abyss and higher than the firmament. And then the music ceased, and he spoke and said, my Ainur are mighty, Melkor is the mightiest, but know that I, Iluvatar, um, shall take these things that you have sung and bring them forth so that you can see what you've created. And you, specifically Melkor, will notice and discover that no theme can be played that does not have its absolute beginnings within me. By the way, I'm paraphrasing here, guys, because the way he writes this is extremely antiquated. Also, I don't, want to get into copyright issues for word verbatim read-throughs. We've been doing this for a long time now, and this is not a reading of. This is an analysis of and a discussion around these points. Anyone that attempts to manipulate these things essentially is going to fail. And it says here that the Ainur were afraid because they didn't quite comprehend. Melkor was initially filled with shame, but then that made him angry because he got embarrassed. And at this point, Iluvatar went out unto the regions that he had made for the Ainur, and they followed him. But when they came into the void, he said, "Behold your music," and showed them a vision of a new world, now globed in the middle of the void, sustained therein, but not of it. And as they looked, the world began to unfold its history. And as they looked, he said, "Behold what you have created with your music. Each of you shall find contained within," it says, "and here, Melkor, you will discover all the secret thoughts of your mind, but you will understand that they are nothing more than a part of the whole and basically reflect my glory." Listen, son. Oh, wow. So he tells them a lot of things here that not all of them understand, but he also didn't tell them everything. It says, "For to none but himself he revealed all that he had in store." Um, hmm. And so this is interesting. They say, as the Aenir watched the world before them, they saw things that they had not thought because they came from Iluvatar. Um, they saw the coming of the children of Iluvatar and were amazed, as well as the habitations that were prepared for them. Hmm. This is interesting. It says here, because the children of Iluvatar were conceived by him alone and had come with a third theme. So in the first two themes, I'm assuming we're talking about the themes created the worlds and everything else, but then the third theme was when he created the children. Hmm. So does anyone out there have any knowledge about what specifically each one of the three themes created? Because it says here during the third theme was when the children were conceived. But what about the first two themes? Maybe I'm not understanding the text here. Does it specifically say what was created in those themes, or has that been said elsewhere in some of like histories of Middle Earth and stuff? Those of you who are like Tolkien experts, let me know in the comments below. Children of Iluvatar being the elves and men, firstborn and the followers, as they were referred to. Um, he chose a place for their habitation in the deeps of time. What's up, everybody? Quick commercial break here to give it a shout out to our guild champions, who are the highest tier memberships here on YouTube: Ancient Entity, Assassin Gamer 94, Babylonia Rising, Crazy's Relative, Mujin, and Remedy. Thanks so much for the highest tier membership. And thanks to all of the members who support the channel, because you keep me doing this full time. You too can become a supporter if you're new here. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon so you never miss an update. Join as a member. There's 3 different tiers. We do lots of special stuff, private polls, private videos. You get a shout out if you're the highest tier membership, but you can also do one-off donations in the form of super chats on any live stream or premiere you see, and of course super thanks on any upload or YouTube short. Whatever you can contribute, it's great. Keeps me on the air full time, keeps the cats fed, keeps the homestead running. Anyway, back to the video, everybody. It says here, when the Aenir had beheld the habitation and had seen the children arise, they began to put all their thought towards that place. It says Melkor was the chief among them. And it says he faked, even unto himself, that he desired to go there and order things for the good of the children, controlling the heat and the cold, and etc. It says, but he desired rather to subdue the elves and men, because he was jealous of the gifts that Iluvatar had promised to give them. So this is essentially mirroring the story of Satan, or Lucifer, I should say, in the story of the biblical sense, where he wanted to have these things for himself and bend them to his will. Hmm. So it's mirroring that story. As it says here, it says it is said. Hang on, I got to reread this part. Said the other Ainur looked over this world, which the elves called Arda, with their hearts rejoicing in the light. But because of the roaring of the sea, they felt unquiet. And they saw all of these things like iron and stone and silver and gold. But it says, out of all these, the water was praised the most. And it is said by the Eldar that in the water lives yet the echo of the music. That's an interesting theme, because if you've ever actually gone and just sat by the side of the sea or been on a boat, on a ship, and listened to the ocean and the waves and everything else, it's a very interesting way to look at things. Huh. So it says here the Ainu called Ulmo by the elves. It says here he turned his thought to the waters. And Manwe went to the airs and the winds, and he pondered the winds and the airs the most. And it said Aule focused on the fabrics of the earth and the making of things. And it says here that Iluvatar spoke to Ulmo and said, do you notice how Melkor has made war upon my province, bringing bitter cold, the cunning work of frost, as well as heats and fires without restraint? Listen to the fall of rain upon the earth. It says, you, in these clouds, you will draw near to Manwe, who is your friend, who you love. It almost says, yes, water is now more fair than I'd ever imagined before. I will seek out Manwe, so he and I can make melodies together that will delight you. And it says here that Manwe and Ulmo, since the beginning, have been allies and served most faithfully the purpose of Iluvatar. I think that's a good breaking point here, everybody, because it's looking like there's still a lot to go in this initial section. And I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, because there's so much here that confuses me because of the way this is written. This is like reading Shakespeare, everybody. If you've never read Shakespeare, the language is so antiquated compared to modern standards. Um, this is very interesting. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this episode, and hopefully some of you have answers to my questions as we've read through. Going far forth from here, it looks like we're going to be talking about unrest among the Ainur and beyond. And I kind of have vague recollections about some of this stuff, but it's interesting reading again, almost as if it's for the first time. Anyway, like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update as we continue to discuss the Silmarillion and read through bits and pieces to get a greater understanding of the history of Middle-earth and all things surrounding. Till next time, everybody, stay safe. Happy reading.